We're waiting for more people to join us slowly. And as we do, let me just thank everyone who has joined us here today in what it is in London and maybe in the rest of Europe as well, at least quite a wintry afternoon. But we're very excited to finally tell you about CoCoDa, which is a new collaborative initiative that some of us here today have set up. The CoCoDa initiative is looking to study and address the systemic risks of online platforms. And if this sounds exciting, don't get too excited because I'm going to continue with some housekeeping rules on the next slide. Say we are recording this webinar, and we're going to do our best to share all these interesting content and conversations we are going to have via social media, as well as various other communication channels. We have an email newsletter, both as a project and our individual organizations. We're going to promote this via socials to make sure that the messages and the work that is being presented today reaches as many interested parties and potential collaborators as possible. As part of this, we will be using some of the quotes and snippets of content in future communications about the CoCoDa project. There will be opportunities to ask questions at all times. In Zoom, there is a Q&A section, so do use it. And we'll try to answer them during the Q&A session. We'll also be sharing some additional information as people present some of their work if you want to learn more. And we have a team here in the call who is available in the chat for any other questions and queries you may have. So we're moving now to the next slide, please, where I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what to expect in this webinar. I have the pleasure to briefly say a few words about CoCoDa and introduce our team and our esteemed advisors. And then we are going to have 4 interventions, 4 short talks from the CoCoDa team and some of our collaborators. Again, thank you, Estelle and Elika, for being here with us today. Very much looking forward to hear about your initiatives and your work. And then we have around 20-25 minutes for more general discussion. So, the CoCoDa project. CoCoDa stands for Concentration and Control of Data by Dominant Online Platforms. It is a research project. It's a collaboration of 4 different institutions that you see here on the slide. There's the University St. Gallen in Switzerland, as well as the University of Lausanne. There's the Maastricht team in the Netherlands. And then there is us at the Open Data Institute based in the UK. And we have received funding for a 4-year project starting this summer from the Swiss National Science Foundation. We are going to be working on a series of legal and computational approaches to address this high concentration and control of data in very large online platforms and search engines, with the aim to contribute to a wider conversation, to an emerging toolkit of practical, specific approaches that help with platform accountability, grounded in different disciplines, in particular in law and computer science and AI. We're moving to the next slide. So before I tell you a few words about what the project is about, this is the team. You're going to hear some of them speaking about some specific projects and work streams in CoCoDa today, but they will also be available for general questions about the projects and their work and interest in the Q&A. I am not going to ask everyone to introduce themselves, but just for you to know who's here, we have Simon and Luca from the Universität St. Gallen. We have Conrad. I'm going to butcher your name. Gase, is this correct? No, this is horrible.
It's good enough. Good enough.
Good enough. Oh, you're very kind, sir. And Henry from Maastricht. And then we have more people on the next slide. We have Aurelia and Alice from Lausanne. And then with me at the ODI is Sophia, who's here with us today. Jake is also going to present some work. And Callum, who is enjoying some well-deserved annual leave. We are privileged to be advised by a fantastic lineup of experts from various disciplines: Joe, Tom, Thomas, Alyssa, Christian, and Sarvan. And when setting up this advisory board, no, that was too early. We wanted to make sure that we give justice to this rich, complex ecosystem of theories and practices, approaches, tools, implications, regulatory changes and trends in which our project operates. We're not going to be able to introduce our advisors in a lot of detail, but what this basically should tell you is something about our ambitions in terms of the types of approaches and methods we will pursue, but also the type of policy and other impact that we hope our project will have over the next 4 years. So now we can actually move to the next slide. So just a few slides from me to set the scene. So the general context is very large online platforms, which you probably know better than me, is a term that has legal connotation. It refers in the context of the DSA to those types of online platforms many of us and the rest of society is using regularly, which have many users, 45 million users monthly within the EU as defined by the law. Now, these dominant platforms bring with them specific risks to European society and the rest of the world, not just owing to their size and volume of users, but also the types of risks and changes in society that they can influence and impact. And with them and with this scale and footprint comes a need to protect minors, to mitigate against illegal and other types of harmful content, and also to think about potential risks and broader impacts on fundamental rights. So these types of risks that are also listed here on the slide need to be addressed in various ways, and the law tells us about specific ways in which they should be addressed, not just by the organizations themselves, but also by other stakeholders, including researchers, including policymakers and civil society organizations like ourselves, to really make sure that standards are set on those organizations, they are held accountable, and we as a whole society create a healthier, trustworthy online ecosystem. There is a legal part to it, where the systemic risks from these very powerful platforms are recognized by emerging laws, not just in the EU, but also here in the UK, where we are based, and further afield, with regulation like the DSA aimed at helping researchers and other independent auditors to access information about what is happening on those platforms, as well as protecting minors and protecting other rights. At the same time, there is a need to think about the technical aspects of this accountability economy. These platforms are very complex. The data that they generate and should be accessible by researchers and others is available in different formats and comes with different technical challenges. So part of what needs to happen to create this better accountability economy is to provide those enabling computational methods and approaches to make this happen, whether that means tools to do responsible data scraping or collection, or better, more accessible ways to reverse engineer some of those algorithms and much more. So in this project, we want to bring these different types of tools together to contribute to that toolkit that I was mentioned earlier, to address those systemic risks, to increase user agency and autonomy, to support more auditing and accountability in the platforms, and to drive meaningful structural change in how platforms work. If we're moving to the next slide. Part of what we are going to do in the project, building also on existing work of the investigators, is to build these practical tools, interdisciplinary tools, to explore and mitigate some of those risks. And you will hear from two teams today. But as I was saying, this is ongoing work building on methods and experience and research of the investigators. We're not going to have time to present everything today. There will be many others opportunities to do this. But just to say that some people here today who will be available in the question answering session as well have been working on this for many years, not just to study very large online platforms, but also, for instance, with tools like platform control to study data privacy and other related practices in platforms. So we're going to do a lot of research. We're going to be building tools. We hope to validate them with users and experts in the ecosystem. And besides that, we also aim to think about the policy implications of the work. We've already started to do this. So these are just two screenshots showing some of our more recent work. So if you're interested in collaborating with us on policy contributions or drafting policy positions or any other types of policy-related interventions, do get in touch. And I think the team is also going to share some of the links to the policy work that we've been doing since July in the chat. We are a very collaborative bunch. So I think on the next slide, we have signposted some of the events that we plan to be at in the next months. So if you're joining those events or if you're planning to we hope to be able to talk to you in person then, but also do subscribe to our LinkedIn page and other channels that the team are going to refer to in the chat to continue this conversation. Say, I'm just looking, so I'm actually not bad on time, which brings us to the lightning talks. So we're gonna have a sandwich with the CoCoDa being the bread, and our guests from the DSA 40 Data Access Collaboratory and Algorithm Watch presenting in the middle. As Sophia was saying, we have 5 minutes today for each of these very interesting streams of work. I will do my best to keep us on time so that we also have time to hear from the rest of the CoCoDa team on their plans and interests and hopes and dreams, as well as take questions. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Luca and Simon to tell us about 2 of the tools that the CoCoDa team is working on.
Thank you very much, Elena, and thanks for so many people for coming, for showing your interest in this project. We hope that we can supply you with reasons to come again next time. Right? So in the next 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, we're going to show the first 2 technolegal tools. Next slide is good, Sophia. Thanks a bunch. We're going to show the first 2 technolegal tools. One is called SOAP, the other is called Flag and Safe. And you see this little robot flaggy down here on the left side of the slide. You can already advance to the next slide, Sophia. So the first one is easy to remember. I'm taking a joke that Luca made about a year ago. So SOAP creates bubbles, as we all know, and if Sophia once clicks, then we know that SOAP creates filter bubbles, and that's the idea of the SOAP tool that Luca has built in the past year. This is a system for observing and analyzing posts. I'll give a quick overview of how the technical part of this works on the next slide. So basically what we do is we create sock puppets. We don't just create one sock puppet, but we create multiple of these sock puppets, so little half autonomous entities that can roam social media. Then we configure this sock puppet on the next click. So we tell it, for instance, you're interested in aviation, you're interested in the German election, you're interested in this kind of political ideology, or that kind of war, or that kind of of Get Ready With Me videos. And then we release this sock puppet onto social media. Click again. And then the sock puppet autonomously roams social media. It will like content that adheres to its configuration, and it will ignore content that does not adhere to its configuration. And with this, over time, if we send out lots of these things, we can literally build content filter bubbles on the next slide. And so on the left side, you see the technical aspect of this. So we use some data scraping, reverse engineering, we use some visual language models to analyze the content that these sock puppets experience. And then we combine this with legal tools.
Exactly, Simon. So SOAP is not just a sock puppet tool with technical expertise scraping platforms, but we especially build it for conducting systemic risk research under the DSA. And under the DSA, we have different kinds of articles, for example, Article 40, which provides researchers with data access. The problem there, which we saw, is that this data access sometimes is just a high overview about all of the posts circulating on the platform. But we've been really interested in, okay, but what posts are actually reaching the end user, and how does the feed of the end user look like? And therefore, we can use those sock puppets to mimic those users and see, okay, how does the personalization on the platform, which is created through the recommender system, look in the end? And on the next slide, we already ran our tool for the first time and have some interesting things which we discovered. For example, with the example which Simon mentioned earlier with the aviation, you can see the For You feed of a sock puppet which was really interested into aviation and how the recommender system steers him gradually into a filter bubble, and it gets stronger and stronger, and all of the content is only related to aviation. But of course, we also did this for systemic risk research, for example, for posts which voters in Germany would see on the TikTok platform, if they're, for example, interested in some political leaning. And there we could also see, okay, those feeds were highly homogeneous. Most of the content was only from one party. The viewpoint diversity was really decreased, and we could mimic those different kind of voters on the platform. This tool was also from us open sourced and presented at the ACM Rexis conference last year, so it can be used by everyone for auditing systemic risks on Instagram and TikTok currently. Moving on to the next platform and also tool which we're currently building. This is the Flag and Save tool, or platform or concept, as you want to call it. It's a trusted feedback loop for children, which we're currently building. So under the DSA, minors also have a special priority. And what we want to do is we want to have a look, okay, there are all of those cool kind of concepts, for example, out-of-court dispute settlement bodies, as also, for example, different kind of articles protecting minors especially, and how do actually minors perceive Instagram, what kind of content do they encounter, and what can they do to also shape their personalization. And therefore, we also had a workshop, me and Alicia together, where we used child-centered design to actually have a look, okay, those are the tools currently missing for minors on platforms. Those are the things which minors would like to see. And therefore, we are building a tool which is also using all of those technical tools, from data scraping to a chatbot, which guides minors through, for example, reporting content, or helping minors when they see content on the platform, to also invoking the right DSA articles like out-of-court dispute settlement bodies or trusted flaggers. Moving on, LK.
Yes, I guess I'll take over. Thank you so much. I'm here to quickly introduce the work that we're doing at the DSA 40 Data Access Collaboratory. I think on the next slide, either there's another kind of presentation slide, exactly so like I already said, basically. And then there's a next slide where on the very high level, kind of, I can talk a bit about like the overall goals that we kind of follow with our project. So first of all, we are a project by the Weizenbaum Institute and the European University Viadrina. Yeah, our goal was to kind of, like, we were set up like roughly a year ago to basically check how the implementation of the DSA, especially with regards to the data access provisions in Article 40, was going. And at this point, access to public data had already been active for a year, and it was basically already, we were kind of in the process of kind of figuring out how access to non-public data was supposed to work. And this is exactly also where kind of our work positions itself, right? So we kind of try to consult stakeholders. That basically means kind of informing researchers about the options that they have, right? The issues that might exist. How do we get to the issues? Well, we do information and networking for the scientific community, and also kind of building building on this, we kind of also try to kind of create resources meant to support and coordinate kind of access requests, with ourselves also working towards some access requests. And then kind of this all kind of leads into like our kind of fourth overall goal, which is the evaluation of the implementation process. And it's not going so well. I don't have so many slides on that. I don't have any slides actually on how well it goes, but I just take my word for it. It's not going well. If you go to our website, which you can see on the next slide, which is dsa40collaboratory.eu. You can also find like a podcast that I recently recorded with Tech Policy Press and other kind of information that we kind of present to actually show how it's not going well, but how do we actually get to this kind of assessment? Well, we have our data access tracker, which sounds a bit more sophisticated than it actually is. It's basically a survey where we ask researchers to kind of share with us the experiences that they had with platforms. Right? And which basically means like, did you apply for data access? What data did you apply for? What data did you get? How did the kind of process with the platforms kind of pan out, right? And then based on this, we kind of started drafting an FAQ. So if you have any questions regarding data access, this might be a helpful resource. I don't know. We have not yet gotten so much feedback about it. We're also tracking issues. So this is something that's in the work right now to kind of create a bit of a wall of shame, so to say, because again, it's not going well. And like this needs to be documented in order to put both pressure on the regulator and on the platform. And so we're kind of now trying to figure out how we can kind of easily document all the different things that researchers experienced in the last, nearing 2 years, right? From their access being terminated to incomplete data to low accuracy data, to just generally kind of being treated in a disrespectful way by platforms. So there's a kind of a huge bunch of issues, which kind of also leads us to kind of offer our meetup, basically, because we know that research on data access can be frustrating. And so we kind of provide a space every month to kind of exchange and kind of talk about issues and kind of have like a bit of a how would you say, kind of trauma bonding experience, so to say. And then we also provide a newsletter. So I'm currently writing the one, but there's a lot of to discuss. Also with the omnibus package, I dropped a link into the chat like a few minutes ago, where it's a European Commission seems to be actively attacking one way of data access, which is the GDPR-based data donation. So this is something where you probably hear something from us also in the next few days. And we also do publications, and this is also like I'll also be at some of the events that Elena showed in like a few slides ago. And so like we have and this is on the next slide, and I will also drop a link to this in the chat. We also have this kind of report on data access from policy to practice, where we basically explain exactly what data access is, where the problems lie, for also researchers who might not have so much experience with it. And I'm already getting to the end of my time. So I would just quickly talk about the next slide, which is kind of putting all our kind of research into practice, right? So
you still have 30 seconds. Breathe.
Okay, in that case,
we can wrap
great.
it up
Like
in
we
a
also,
civilized way.
I mean, I think these slides speak for themselves. Like we try to like create ontologies for data access. So like to standardize the data that we get for platforms, we participated in these reports that came out by Columbia and by the KGI Institute. And we also asked for the top 1,000 most viewed posts, or the most viral posts, which are not accessible, which I think is a shame. And we've gotten only negative feedback from the platforms, but this does not mean that we will stop trying. So Esther might talk a bit more about this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Everyone is keeping time brilliantly. Thank you very much for that. And we're already advancing to our third talk from Estelle Panatier from Algorithm Watch. Thank you again for being here. I think we can move to the next slide with
yes, thank you. Next slide. Perfect.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. I'm very happy to give you an overview of the work of Algorithm Watch on systemic risk and on platform accountability. I can go to the next slide. We are, for those who don't know us, a non-profit civil society organization based in Switzerland, where I'm based, and also in Germany, in Berlin. Our focus is on the impact of algorithms and AI on individuals as well as on society, and we try, or our mission is that algorithms strengthens human rights, democracy, justice, and sustainability. Our approach is what we call evidence-based advocacy. It means that we start by doing investigation, and that from after having done this investigation, we do our policy analysis, where we do some recommendation that we then try to disseminate and to bring to decision makers. Also, maybe where I'm talking from, so I said I'm based in Switzerland, and I'm more actually from the policy team than from the research team. We have actually a tech research team also, so my work is more about translating the work of our research team, of our investigation work, into policy recommendation and to disseminate those, and especially with a focus also on Switzerland. As I said, one of our focus is on impact of algorithms, AI, and platforms on the public sphere, and you can go to the next slide. And if we first look at what we do, like on the investigation part, on the research part, we have done or are still doing journalistic work. We are having also journalistic fellows, to try to highlight those issues. We have also a couple of research projects, and we are doing a tech investigation, for example, on data access. We shortly also requested under our DSA Article 44 the data from Google regarding the impact of the AI overview service on the traffic to external websites. But we're also working on the access to reliable information on chatbot and democracy, and also have a project at the moment on non-consensual nudity services. So it's quite broad, and you can also go to the next slide, which is more like the more of my domain, so to say, our policy and advocacy work. We have been, my colleagues in Berlin have been involved a lot also in the DSA, negotiation, and are now working also a lot on the DSA implementation. Our focus, or my focus, is also more than on the Swiss platform governance. As we are not an EU country, we are doing our own actually regulation, and that's also something I wanted to spotlight today with you. And you can go to the next slide. Yes, so after actually a very long delay, we are now having a first draft law on the regulation of social media and search engines in consultation. So we have now a consultation process until mid-February, where all stakeholders can give feedbacks about the law. What we can say already from the law, it's really it has been published end of October, so it's still very fresh, but it's kind of a DSA light. So the Swiss, we often inspire ourselves of what the EU does, and then do it in a very lighter version with some kind of a Swiss finish. But what's positive is that there is that we also have that data access, that there is transparency of moderation decision, that also some risk analysis and transparency obligation are foreseen, where we see already like a big lax. It's on the how the law, what the law covers or doesn't cover. At the moment, it's really only looking at flops, a very large online platform. It only partially covers AI chatbot and Gen AI application, even though we see more and more issue in the access to reliable information with those platforms. And it has also no DMA aspects. The whole DMA aspect are not looking at in Switzerland. And maybe another point interesting on systemic risk, or like platform they have to do a risk evaluation, but they don't need to do anything to show how they intend to mitigate. So there is still there is a lot of work for us and other organizations to do to get also a better law out of it, but it's already a start. Yes, I know it might not be, it's quite specific, so it might not be interesting for all of you, but at least you know that there is also a word that there is not only the TSA, but that there is also some other legislative processes happening. And you can go to the next slide, and I think I'm actually already done, and I'm looking very forward to the discussion, and I will send you also a couple of links to our resources in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this, and I think it's really important to have an understanding of the regulatory landscape more broadly, including in Switzerland, UK, and other coalition of the willing, because only in this way we are able to compare notes, see what is working, build that tool ecosystem, and where needed, apply pressure and other interventions to drive what we think is important in terms of changes in behavior and approaches to technology and algorithmic accountability. Thank you for this. And last but not least, we are coming back to a CoCoDa project that is run in collaboration with the university, with a team at the University of Oxford. And I'm going to hand over to Jake Stein, who is our ODI fellow.
Thank you so much, Elena, and to the other presenters thus far. It's been really interesting to watch. So I'm Jake Stein. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Oxford, and it is my honor to be the final slice of bread in the CoCoDa sandwich today via the ODI. If you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you, Sophia. So the question I'm trying to answer with my research that's in partnership with the CoCoDa is how do we best support researchers in accessing data in the post-API era? So as many of you all know, as soon as the platforms became aware of just how valuable web data was to AI development, they went ahead and clawed back all of that previously available, wonderful open API access for researchers. So I personally took that very personally. I remember a course in my master's not too long ago, just a few years ago, really, where we were meant to get access to a research API from a social media, get the data set together, analyze it, and write a paper all in 4 weeks. And that was perfectly possible because the research was totally open. So if it's AI that's taking this access away from us, then I think the only natural way to go about it is to try to use AI to build some tools of our own. And well, I have tried. And let's say some of the motivation comes from remembering about how good we had it, and some of the motivation for wanting to build these tools also comes from the pain of trying to access data to build these tools now. Could I go to the next slide, please? So in a paper that we published at the FACT conference this year, just this last summer, we were able to build some models to unlock Uber's pay algorithm. We did this using the exact mechanism that Elke mentioned is now under attack very recently, which is using GDPR to submit some delegated data subject access requests. So organizing with drivers in an organization called Workers Info Exchange in London, we were able to collect 1.5 million trips in order to try to understand the inner workings of this algorithm. This was really painful in 2 ways. The first was in organizing the structured data. Could I have the next slide, please? So the structured data that was returned from Uber often was organized in a way that made it more difficult rather than easy to analyze. Every response we got back came in a different format. This broke our code when we tried to analyze it. It meant that it was hard to understand the meaning of individual fields or columns in the data. It just made it a lot more of a slog. And so we began to think about how semantic data, or data that exists in a normalized format that contains the relationships and the contexts by nature, could be helpful to this. Could we go to the next slide, please? The second way in which we had a lot of trouble with this project was less so in the computational or technical format, but more so in the organizational. So we held a bunch of workshops, we went to a bunch of meetings, we consulted with organizers, we talked to legal experts, and the reality is it's very difficult to select the correct legal modality to gain access to data given a particular research project. So there's a lot of options out there, and for any hypothetical research project, there might be different kinds of technical and legal overhead that need attending to. And so that is another bit that took way more work than it needed to, that we think that could be assisted at least in part by semantic data. Could we have the next slide now? So even though it's AI that we have to blame for now having these data access problems, perhaps if we want AI to help solve our data access problems, we can't just ask an LLM what to do or to produce the proper request format given our research project. Just like in the Uber example, for one, data doesn't contain all of the meaning necessary in the structure it's delivered in. And for two, machines, much like computer scientists like myself, do not speak the legalese that is needed to be fluent in order to navigate this. However, there are a lot of tools in the semantic data space that hold potential in resolving these sort of problems. So from the bottom up, the SOLID project, something that the ODI is very familiar with, has started to organize how we can securely and privately hold data for personal use or for use in apps. Elka, I know, is touched briefly on the OSDA, which is a way that maybe will organize that data as it comes back from platforms. And then from the top down, the EU, for example, has put in place a very robust set of ways to access individual laws and the text and metadata of those laws. However, there is a missing piece in the middle, and that is the actual content of the laws and how to navigate around the different modalities that are available in order to access data. That is precisely what we're trying to produce, such that we can hand it off to an AI, and that AI can use that very well organized, foolproof, hopefully, set of organized graph data to then produce better advice and tools for individual researchers. Finally, last slide, as I wrap up, I know I'm running out of time here. So we've begun to try to do this, and the answer is we have a long way to go. I've produced a few of these graphs and gave them to models, and models still get a lot wrong. And this is precisely, I think, where we still need to do some work, but it also shows the value of producing a resource that can make models in this context a little bit more reliable going forward. I think that is all my time, but thank you so much again for your attention.
Thank you. Okay, so we have had 4 lightning talks that already give you a number of interesting avenues for research and engagement and signpost resources you may want to access if you are a researcher who is struggling to get access to the data you need, or in fact, if you're thinking about contributing to different types of tools to facilitate that accountability, platform accountability that we were talking about. So I think we're now done with the presentations and we can take the slides off. Excellent. So I see there are some audience questions coming in, which is great. Keep them coming. But before we get to them, let me just spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes to allow the people who have come up with the CoCoDa vision to tell us a bit more about the project, about their interests and priorities as we embark on this 4 years project. So I see already Conrad, Simon, Aurelia, you're here. So I have a few questions to you, if that's okay, and then we will be moving to some of the questions that I see coming through in the chat. And I'll start with you, Conrad. Tell us a little bit more about what CoCoDa is for you and what motivated you to be part of this initiative.
Sure. I think what we're seeing is that there's more and more concentration of data and control, and that these infrastructures that run society are sort of ever more out of public scrutiny and without public consultation, and I think that's problematic, that infrastructures sort of are privatized. And in my research, this is the key thing that I've been looking into, what it means to have this balance between maybe some of the infrastructure being run privately while also still accomplishing the social good. So for many years I've been as a result of that, interested in mobile apps, and still in that together with Henry, and we're trying to find new ways to get new insights into how these infrastructures affect society.
And why why is it important, and in the projects that in the work that you've been doing so far, the work that you plan to do over the next years, what do you think are the most promising technical approaches?
What's very challenging is that for researchers, the options that are available are quite limited, but we're trying to navigate those sort of tightrope with what's available. Henry has recently been looking at communications from smartwatches, trying to see what we can get out of those limited communications about what connected devices up to. We're working with various APIs on Android to see if we can study the effects of social media easier to sort of use what is available to us technically in creative ways.
Okay, thank you. So I'm trying to summarize for my own understanding. So what we are seeing here are examples of explorations of studies of what is currently technically and legally possible, what affordances do these platforms still have that allow someone, a researcher, for instance, or a journalist, or a policymaker, to get a better understanding and collect that evidence about the status quo. And that means web platforms, but it also is extended to a number of different devices. And all this is carried out against a certain legal background, which includes the DSA, which we have mentioned, but also GDPR and other laws. That's great. Simon, if I would move next to you, so you've already presented some tools and interesting projects with young children that you're working with. So the same with the same type of question to you. So which types of technical interventions do you think will be most impactful? And perhaps following up from that, what's the best case scenario for platform accountability in the next few years? And how will we contribute to that best case?
So Sian, we wrote a paper a few years ago with together with Aurelia, who I will switch over to as part of this answer as well, right? So
yes.
Advance warning, Aurelia. We have had this frustration that I think echoes what Konrad was saying. Technology-based legislation or legally based technology. So what I would like to do is I would like to find legislation that can be exploited objectively, that is not where it's not a matter of interpretation of the legislation, where it's a clear case, right? Then I want to find this clear case, and I want to write the right tool, the right technical tool that exploits this case in order to benefit society, benefit users, benefit all of us and the people who are not watching, right? So this would be my ideal case. Finding this loophole, so to say, that we can technically exploit without making ourselves without becoming criminals, ideally ourselves, right? And this is the first part of the answer. The second part, hey, the best case scenario that we could contribute to as CoCoDa is what we want to do is we want to get these tools, to get them out, to get people use them, to get feedback back, and to redevelop them in order to roll them out to society. And there's a question by Tom Campbell in the chat, and questions like these, I think this is the essence. Where do we balance? Where do we find a political balance between user empowerment, transparency, and agency on users, and constraining of platforms? And not a lot of this will. So many things there will not fly. And I've become wary of this legislation that will simply not be accepted, and then we won't put teeth on it, right? Like we do at the moment. Aurelia, what's the best case solution?
No, but just to build up on this, and I think this is where kind of my answer to your question, Lena, comes in. Is like it's not so much about it's really about like also creating this evidence base that we then can build upon for the policy making discourse. So it's not just like about what we can do, finding just the necessary loopholes, but is how can we leverage the legal mechanism we have at hand, what can it lead to, and how can we with this actually generate some sort of a good foundation for thinking about regulations within the digital economy, even more broadly speaking. And Estelle pointed this out, right? Okay, new draft legislation also in Switzerland, but also other countries, right? Thinking even more about platform regulation, but not just platform regulation. So what can we already test and figure out and find out? I think the access tracker that LK presented is also one of these ways of generating that evidence and getting this baseline. And I think especially now where we haven't been talking about this today, but like there is this idea of simplifying digital regulation to the extent that we can, and this kind of quest of seeing how things should be merged or deleted. It's really important that interdisciplinary research provides us with some sort of knowledge of, hey, what has worked, what has not worked, how can we steer technology, and how can we steer digital economy and this concentration of data and control that we see, how can we maybe split it up, and what can this lead to? So I think these projects are important exactly for that, to set this foundation.
Okay, thank you for that. And maybe a final question before I move to the audience questions. What sort of opportunities do you see, Aurelia, for projects like CoCoDa to contribute to the policy conversation, and to what opportunities do you see to work with policymakers?
Yeah, no, with quite a bit, right? Like the first slides, Elena, also that you showed, right? Like when we said like these were already some of the policy contributions. Okay, these were just kind of statements that we did, but this is also based on the know-how that Luca developed through implementing and testing the SOAP tools and all the frustrations that he shared with us over different meetings, right? So I think it has a lot of potential that through these very hands-on applications, you understand how things works, how legal rights can be strengthened, and that this can be fed back to the policymaking discourse. And as you said yourself, we're tremendously lucky to have such a great advisory board that also helps us steer the project and make those right connections. And this is very powerful for such a project to kind of bring those messages also to the people that can actually act upon it.
All right, excellent. So thank you very much for the questions that you've already shared. Let's see how many we're going to manage to cover in the remaining time, but rest assured that we will follow up after the webinar And the team here at the ODI, as well as in Maastricht, St. Gallen, and Lausanne, will be in touch. So in no particular order, there was a question from Tom about very large online platforms whose dominance to some degree comes from their strong network effects and siloed proprietary technologies. So, and this is for everyone, including our guests Estelle and Elka. But do you think that requiring platforms to use open protocols, open social web protocols, ActivityPub was mentioned here, would pose a viable activity to a different way of doing platform governance? Yes, Elka, let's.
I have an opinion on this.
Yes.
Because we are like actively using ActivityPub to standardize data that we get through data donations. And the DSA actually also foresees a standardizing mechanism for things related to Article 40, which is the data access mechanism. I'm a bit doubtful, however, to what extent the kind of top-down approach, like the enforcement-based approach, is kind of going to provide us with meaningful results in the near future. So like, I mean, there are investigations ongoing into some of the platforms, right? The Commission recently published findings into TikTok and Meta platforms, right? Which also are concerning like the data access tools and procedures that they put forth, right? And this to me would be an optimal point to kind of say, okay, now we're standardizing it, right? Because we're criticizing different platforms, or actually 3 different platforms, right? If you count Instagram and Facebook as different platforms for the same thing. I don't know if they're actually going to do it. And then like these standardizing procedures take a lot of time and will have to involve the platforms also, which I think again makes them kind of susceptible to capture. So I think the kind of less structural, but kind of in the short term, probably more promising approaches are bottom-up approaches, where researchers get together and kind of do what Cory Doctorow would call adversarial interoperability. So even though the kind of actors don't provide this interoperability, we provide it. And I think this would be the way that probably to me seems to be the most promising in the short term.
Thank you. I say to my CoCoDa colleagues, this means let's think about building interoperable data exchange standards and APIs for all the tools that we are building. Jake's work is providing solutions into how one could lift existing data or possibly data and approaches produced by other systems with the help of generative AI to be compliant with those sort of standards. I have a question from Faye, who's doing research in performance arts, and she's commenting on the dangers of AI results. I assume something like hallucinations and other harms that are very well documented, in case where there's very few available data sources that those tools could draw from. Is this something that we plan to address in CoCoDa? And if yes, how? So I assume this pertains to the types of systemic risks that these technologies could create, among others, because some answers, are require access to very niche specialized sources. Anyone?
I think one thing, and it's like I think one thing that I find quite interesting, the discussion that we keep having, is that, well, isn't ChatGPT pretty widely used already? But then should it fall out of the scope of the DSA? And since we focus lots on techno-legal tools, I'm not quite sure if we've yet found the best legal angles to look into it, right? It would be interesting if it actually was covered. There's discussion maybe covering under the DMA, there's cloud provisions, you can add things. So I think what we try to know is tech and law, maybe in AI outputs, Gen AI output, that's currently less the case, that we know what laws we have, but we also try to develop a blueprint from the CoCoDa project in terms of, okay, what does that all of that mean for future platform regulation? I think that's probably that's going to be one of our key outputs, and that's probably going to make some quite concrete suggestions also in the general area of Gen AI regulation, I could imagine.
Yeah, and I believe I'm not mistaken that the European Commission has already confirmed that they are looking into ChatGPT and whether it falls into the remit of the DSA or DMA already. For anyone who's interested, in the UK, Ofcom have recently published a paper on what they call answer engines and the online safety risks that these create precisely because of those hallucinations that they produce. Okay, I'm being mindful of the time, so I have 1, 2, 3 questions to pick from. So very important topics here. Let's see how much we can unpack. But an anonymous question: co-production, decolonization work, indigenous involvement. Are these considerations included from the ground up in our research design? What have I done? I would say that from what I know, or my colleagues are thinking, I know that some of the tools presented today have been co-designed with stakeholders. Absolutely, this is a principle that we are following. In terms of decolonization aspects and indigenous data, it wasn't so much of a focus in the case studies that we were addressing, just because of how those use cases have been selected and the types of partners that we have been collaborating with as we were designing the project. But it is absolutely an important issue that we need to take into account, as some of the tools that we are producing are being deployed in a wider range of use cases. Anything else that the colleagues would want to add at this point on this?
I can add a quick.
Oh yes, Jake, go ahead.
I can say, at least with respect to my experience in the previous project that I touched on very briefly with the Uber algorithmic audit, it was the experience of myself and the researchers involved. I know I can speak for the others in that if it weren't for involving co-design participatory methods, we certainly wouldn't have been able to achieve the technical objectives that we had set out to from the beginning, because ultimately, as techno-legal tools, that legal element is eventually part of a really complex social system that can't necessarily be captured in the technical infrastructure that we end up putting together. So for us, that looked like interacting with organizers in the space and advocates who we know are already pushing a sort of policy agenda that centers the voices of the people who are actually being affected by that policy. It meant going face to face with the data subjects who we knew were interested in gaining a greater perspective on their own personal data through workshops, through one-on-one interviews. And I think that you'll certainly see a similar element of attention to that, fronting those sorts of voices in other research.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to quickly comment on one question before we will have to wrap up, because I see we have 2 minutes left. There was a question about how members of civil society could participate in supporting these types of initiatives and provide feedback into regulation. I think I speak on behalf of everyone here, saying that we are absolutely open to working with everyone. Elka mentioned bottom-up initiatives. These can't be as motivated as we researchers can be. We will not be able to succeed unless we work more widely with like-minded initiatives and organizations, with civil society like us at the Open Data Institute, like Algorithm Watch, like the DSA 40 Data Access Collaboratory, and everyone else who wants to be involved. I have also just seen another intervention in the chat from one of the participants pointing to other related work and collaboration opportunities. This has been fantastic. I feel I've been holding my breath for the last 45 minutes with so much information that was shared and ideas and excitement. We will be holding more of these webinars. We will be present at some of the events. Do subscribe to our LinkedIn page, because this is going to be the main communication channel for us to talk about things we like, things we don't like, things we want to change, things we do, opportunities for collaboration. So these are the main contact points from the 4 institutions that are part of the CoCoDa project. There have been various other links and contact information that were shared in the chat. I'm just going to wrap up by thanking you for joining us today, for sticking with us for quite a complex but important topic over the last 60 minutes. And we're going to be working on this for at least 4 more exciting years. Which is going to take me to the exciting age of 51. And with that in mind, I'd like to thank everyone who spoke here today and answered our questions and asked questions and showed interest in an important topic. And let's keep in touch. Thank you.